Thanks for being here. This is the first Scrandy Squad podcast style video. We're going to talk about our history with Atlas and how we feel about the game right now with all the changes it's had. My name's Admiral Roland. I typically play with the Scrandy Squad. I've sat out the last couple seasons, decided to play with the Federation this season. And today they decided to call it quits pretty early on. So that kind of inspired me to get kind of a group discussion together about how the game's doing, what we feel about it, and all that. So let's go ahead and do introductory. Go ahead.
We're just going over the previous companies we played with?
Just say who you are and how long you've played Atlas. You can go over who you've played with, but you don't have to. And what you like doing in Atlas and what, stuff like that. Just real basic.
Well, I went by Drake96 pretty much every season other than this one in game for every single game that I play, but I've been playing since they came out on Xbox. Got quite a bit of time on Xbox and then switched over to PC and quite a bit of time on here as well. I enjoy the boat fights, fleet fights, stuff like that. Kind of maybe smaller scale than usual, just because the lag gets so ridiculous, it gets kind of just boring. Everybody's just on V-Fire trying to sail around.
All right, Pal, you're up.
Pal, I played with Scrandy Squad the last few seasons. I like boat fighting, boat PvP, ground PvP. Ground PvP is not really a thing anymore, though, so not much of that going on. I've been playing since early Season 3.
Okay. How many hours do you think the two of you have in game?
I have 14,000 on PC, and I'm not sure how much on Xbox. It's probably somewhere around 3.
I think I've got about somewhere around 5K between the two systems, between PC and Xbox.
Oh, so combined or?
About 20K total.
Pretty impressive. All right, Puffin?
Sure, my name's Blake. In game, I go by crew member 123. Started very late season 3. Beach bobbed it up real hard. Season 4, I joined Greeks. I led Greeks alongside Urza in season 5. Joined Scrandy for 6. Been with Milan for the last 3. I've bred in the game. I've done quite a bit of land PvP. I've enjoyed both of them, but this season I've done the least of either of those, and I have been out sailing almost each and every day, having a lot of fun with the new modular boats.
Okay, Booty.
I have 11.5K hours.
11.5K. That's pretty good. All right, Booty, you're up.
I usually go by Booty. This season I went as Amber Turd, for obvious reasons. Played since season 3, started out as Xbox. Joined Scrandy in season 3, and that's who I've played with ever since. Changing from Xbox to PC, I think I played maybe a month of Xbox. It's totally different to go from Xbox to PC. What I like to do in the game, I like repairing boats. I think I'm okay at it. Running swivels as far as like defense goes. As annoyed as I get running power stones, I'm usually the person that does it. So I do get an enjoyment factor, making sure everybody gets that done. And puckle towers.
All right.
A little bit of everything.
Rebel?
Rebel. Go by Rebel. Original name's Aaron. I played with Scrandy a few seasons ago for a couple seasons, I believe. Actually started out against him for a long time and disliked him quite a bit. And then I've probably played roughly 10K hours. Man, let's see. I like to do just about everything in game. Fighting, not so much. I mean, I'm not playing on a fast system, so Xbox is kind of slacked in that area. But anything to do with boats, stuff like that, building, you name it, I'll run around and just have a good time.
Oh, okay, so you're still playing on an Xbox?
Well, I mean, I guess when I started playing with you guys, I switched over to that. What is it, NVIDIA? And that helped out quite a bit. But I mean, even with that thing, and then me being way out in the country with shitty ass internet, it's still kind of slacked due to internet. Eventually, once we get this new house built, I'll go to a computer and start playing again. But we just had a baby last year, so I've had to take a season out or so.
Yeah, stuff like that happens. All right, so I'm gonna kind of change up the order I was planning to do things in. So anybody can talk right now. What is your favorite seasons or time periods from when you've played Atlas? I'll go first. So my favorite season was season 3. By far, I think it was right after the terrible launch, and season 2 was pretty rocky too. There was a 3-month period right after season 3 came out where I felt like the game was perfect. The land PvP was on point. You could raid people and actually make progress. The ship PvP hadn't developed all the metas yet that are still used to this day, like the bar shot meta. So a lot of ship fights was just straight up brawling, cannons, really destructive. Not like today where most fights revolve around who gets the best bar shot off first. It was more about who built a better boat, who was a better captain. And it was a lot of fun. Our company was one of the first ones that got one of those juiced up BPs. We had some 310 medium cannons, and back then something like that was a total game changer. Having a boat that was juiced up like that, you could absolutely dominate, and it was a really good fun period. There's a lot of interesting politics in the game going on. Ton of people playing. They had just brought in Xbox, so there was every tile you'd go to, there'd be like 30 to 40 people in it at the start of the season. It was an absolute blast. Any of you were able to experience that, the season 3 rush?
I was a kind of a inexperienced player during that time, but I was okay at driving boats, so I had fun on boat PvP.
I'd like to say that I gave Powell the best laugh as being the biggest Bob season 3. Someone had told me that you could stick a team with the rhino horn. So Jarecki level like 10 Bob took the rhino out and tried to stick somebody during PvP.
I suppose that didn't work, did it?
Oh. Flame Horse won.
All right, so what was your guys' favorite time period while you played Atlas, like overall?
I've managed to find something that's my new favorite each season. Like, there's always been just like the worst stuff going on, and the sky's always falling down in Atlas. So, season 4, when I really put my first amount of time into the game, I believe it was barrels coming out of cannons. So, it just trashed most of the boat content. So, then I fell into a tribe that absolutely loved land PvP, and we land PvP'd our face off. Into season 5, it was nothing but defensive content amongst the tribe and alliance, and you just picked who you wanted to fight most and who had the gear that you were looking for, and you just went for the content. It was absolutely amazing. So I think season 5 was probably my favorite.
I'd like to welcome John Rambo to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Rambo, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick, like how long you've played Atlas, what you like doing in Atlas, You don't have to mention any company names unless you want to, but just give us a rundown of your Atlas career so far. When did you start playing Atlas?
Yeah. So thanks for having me, John Rambo. I started playing. I guess it was season one. It was January, right after the game came out. I think that was still season one. But when I started playing, it was me and three of my buddies I was in the military with. Just messing around. We thought it was like Ark, so we loved Ark, but yeah, Atlas. It was the thing that drew me into it was just how massive the world was and the islands you could go to, and you could basically just sail all over the place. But not to get too much into that, but I think probably the most fun I've ever had in this game was between, I'd say probably season 3 and 4 was when I did the most learning in this game. I got in with bigger companies and started learning the tricks of the trade, so to speak, and I mean, it just became a really great time, finding out what the quote unquote metas were and, what the most effective way to kill another player was. That was what I always enjoyed. But I've always been kind of, I guess, untraditional player. I've never really, leached onto the shield bash when that was the thing to do, or, the bleeding carbines, which is the newer thing. I've always kind of just, like throwing chaos into the battle and, throwing knives all over the place and grappling people all over the place and just making people super uncomfortable with what they're used to and, just PvPing the crap out of it. I'd say PvP is probably the most fun I get out of this game.
My favorite Rambo memory comes out of season 6. We have an enemy crab come onto the island. Everyone's scrambling to look for the crab. And Rambo really hasn't talked for a while. And out of nowhere, he says, the crab's dead. Like, wait, hold on, what do you mean? He says, the crab's dead, I barrel bombed it, I gotta go to work. Well, where is the crab? Look around the island, I'm sure you'll find it. And then he just leaves.
That was probably the right place at the right time. Just like probably 90% of my moments in Atlas that are out there.
All right. Now, question I have for all of you is, what keeps bringing you back to Atlas? Because the game is in a pretty rough state, and to some people like me, I have the perception that it's been steadily getting worse and worse with every patch. I know not everyone shares that sentiment, but I mean, some of you have 20,000 hours in this game. I have about 6,000 hours roughly. I even keep coming back, even though I have a pretty negative opinion of it. What is it about Atlas that keeps you guys coming back season after season?
Playing with our homies.
Company you play with.
It's a unique game. There's not a lot of games where you can control an island, control a lot of things, a sandbox MMO. There's not very many big ones anyway that have a lot of PvP other than Ark and Atlas.
The fall and rise of fictional pirate empires has been dope. Remember back in like season 4 and 5 when someone used to post the different allied control islands on Reddit all the time? I really got a kick out of seeing those grow and shrink over time. The politics has been fun. I still enjoy the combat. I've learned to like the boats a lot more. I never sailed the plank boats back in the day. I hated those guys. But I love the mod boats. Oh, I bred forever. Breeding was fun.
I think the biggest thing with me is just all the changes that have gone into it from since it released. A couple 2-3 years ago. We've got so many different PvP metas and ships. We're on to modular ships now, which might not be everybody's favorite, but just the amount of things you can do in this game, and the players is always going to be a big thing with me. I'll go on the record and say Atlas is probably one of the most toxic communities I've played with, but at the same time, people join different companies every season, and you might be with an enemy that you might be in a company with an enemy from last season, and you guys are you become best friends, and it's just. We spend so much time on this game, and you just doing the same things together. It just kind of builds those relationships.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase, half the fun of Atlas is talking shit in each season from a million different people, because it is. And you just kind of got to be that people that are Teflon and just let it bounce off you. And then the next season, when you're on team with them, appreciate what a terrible monster they can be and compliment them against your enemies.
Scrandy was on point with that shit.
Well, here's a question. Of all the items that have ever come out in Atlas, I think the most meta shifting one has been the armored dock.
I will agree with that, and it you wouldn't think off the top of your head that that would be it, but the armored dock completely changed the game big time to where if you were a small group that didn't necessarily want to own an island, you could live in Lawless and it could be viable. Because back in the day before there were those things, season 3 specifically, I'm thinking of, you could go into Lawless and sink galleons that are just parked on the beach. You could go out and kill an entire harbor, harvest them all, make planks, and sail home. You could literally harvest other people's boats to make your boats and sail home. It was a good time. But the armor dock, it has its ups and downs because when they added it, a lot of things that people used to do for content instantly became impossible. Like, harbor runs have always been a thing in this game, to this day to some extent. But now a properly equipped company is going to have all their boats in an armored dock in their harbor, at least the important ones. And moreover, I was going to say, moreover, lots of companies will make their entire harbor entrance and the gate into their harbor out of an armored dock, making it virtually impossible to attack it.
I believe it was a good idea, but I believe the ship in the bottle thing would have been a lot better. It would have helped out with lag, and having a flag right next to an armored dock takes out the incentives to land raid anybody, because there's no point. Absolutely no point.
That was the biggest surprise for me with the armored docks too. When I first read about them, I never imagined that would be the thing that prevented you from having any motivation to land raid anyone ever.
Yeah, it's just the fact that they can put everything they own on inside an armored dock into an area where you can't get to it with other than cannon horses. I mean, we do it, so but it's what
I think
they kind of force you to do.
I think
Not
that's one of
forcible.
the biggest failures of the Atlas devs is failing to picture how people are going to actually use the things like armored docks. Like, if everybody used the armored dock as intended, it wouldn't have the effect that it currently has. You wouldn't have an entire harbor entrance built out of armored docks. You wouldn't have a main base in a boat on an armored dock. You wouldn't have a flag base in a boat on an armored dock. I don't know. It's obviously, if people can do something with it, they're going to do it. And I think that's just something they didn't see coming.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, going and raiding Lawless Bobs, don't bother. I mean, for the most part, they're all inside an armored dock, trying to hit an enemy. A well-functioning company is going to have like maybe 5 structures on the island. The gate ship is in an armored dock. The boatyard is in an armored dock. And I'm sorry, not boatyard. Dockhouse is in an armored dock. The flag boat is in an armored dock. Then you have a main and maybe a breeding base. So, like, what can you actually do on land anymore? And it's crazy that the water protector thing ruined land raiding.
I always thought it would be cool if instead of armored docks being the meta for defending a harbor, if they added like a coastal battery type thing that you could build, like what real harbors used to have, something that's going to absolutely demolish any ships coming in. I always thought that would be a cool historical type of thing they could add that could fix that problem.
It's still too much work on the game. There's a lot of work and not a lot of payoff for the work that you put in, the time you put in.
I think we're just kind of hitting walls, especially with the armored docks. You implement the armored dock to kind of help out those smaller companies that can't be online all the time. Maybe those lawless guys that, have a boat they farmed up for, days and they just got it and they want to protect it. But now with all these armored docks, we've taken away raiding altogether. There's, you don't have to worry about off raiding because you're in a, multi-million dollar or HP dock. I know for me, I always play in Lawless, and when I go to a Lawless island, looking for content, seeing 50 docks stacked around the shores is just like, oh, come on, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, man, when his horse have no dream.
I think they did good with the BPs, though.
In what way?
Well, they're easier to get. I can go to the mall, and one night I can come back with 6 or 7 mythical cannon BPs, mythical sails, everything I need to essentially build a boat. And I did it a week straight, and I got enough to build 10 boats. Now we have all.
I agree with that. Only thing that I am frustrated with right now is the ratio of the mod boat parts to the planked boat parts. It still feels like it heavily skews to the planked boat parts.
Yeah,
Brigs.
and the mod boat, they nerfed Brigs into the ground where they're not even viable anymore, but they turned the broadsiders and the turtle boat faster than every other boat, but they can't outturn nothing, so it's a stalemate. If you have a galleon and a broadsider fighting, they literally cannot sink each other. Me and Tombo were having an hour of fighting probably about 30 minutes ago to attest to that. It's just, they can't do nothing. The galley can turn faster this season, which is a good thing, I think. But the broadsiders being able to do 26 or whatever knots constantly is kind of defeats the purpose of everything the game kind of built into you the last 8 seasons. And they didn't adjust the old ships with that, so now they're still stronger. 100% the galleon's stronger than all the ships in the game, but they're slower.
Yeah, and you feel like you're always playing catch up.
Yeah, and it makes it hard for there to actually be a fight because I'm going to be constantly turning where you can't shoot my sails, and you're going to be trying to get in front of me, and that's the entire fight. I mean, you've seen when, Mullen was fighting me with that one galleon.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone to get in front of me, it was hard because I can just turn. And there's
it's super frustrating fighting the galleys. They just spin in a circle the entire time.
And they took the boats that were effective against that, the brigs, and they nerfed them to the ground to where no one's going to use it, so there's no way to kind of counter it.
Are they really nerfed? Like, we have the parts for some of the most spectacular brigs I've ever seen.
They're so slow, they can't compete with anything. It's just non-competing. It really is.
Yeah, they haven't really been nerfed. Everything else is just outclasses them.
Well, that's what I mean by they gave the modular boats this huge beef, and they didn't do anything to offset the galleon or the brig. They did absolutely nothing to them.
But to be fair, the brig will not spontaneously sink for no reason.
That is true. We've had multiple broadsiders get sank by a shipping container, I think it was.
You can ask Mac about that when he joins.
Yeah. So, someone builds up a boat.
In all fairness, slow is safe.
What's some of the craziest bugs that you guys have run into that are new for this season?
Teleporting.
I'd say the teleporting is the worst one.
Teleporting to the nearest grid line. Mm-hmm. On the opposite grid, though, just poof, gone. We had a boat do it in the mod. No boats touched. Nothing touched. Nothing happened. Like, me and Dad were in the same grid. We had just got done fighting. And they were, somebody else was on Dad's boat. But either way, they were throwing their grapple to grab a box. And all of a sudden, they both left grid. They were both all of a sudden in the North Pole. Totally random.
Damn, that's crazy.
Also losing sail NPCs. That's ridiculous.
It seems like that one is getting worse and worse because it didn't seem to be an issue at first, but now, like, I got a report today that somebody was in a boat fight and tiled, and they lost every single NPC on their boat in one go.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's been an issue with boats since season 3.
I haven't had an issue with it for a long time.
I've never lost an NPC on my sail like this until this season.
If it was not taking the NPCs off of your sails and just throwing them somewhere on your boat, it was deleting them.
That's what it's been doing, is delete. Just, well, it's
I've
50,
only noticed
50, I
it
guess,
recently also. And it happened to us in a 2v2, which turned into a 1v2, and Dave got sunk. It was a bummer.
I had him run away from me, but I've never had him disappear.
Remember the boat that we had at the grid line the entire season? That was just inaccessible? It was
We
there,
have
but you
those
couldn't
right
spawn
now.
on it?
Yep, I have 2 of them right now.
Well, and then they messed changing grids completely up because now people load in a lot faster. And Ivan Army got the short end of the stick on that one versus me because I loaded in way before them, and they were sitting there for a good probably 60 seconds before they loaded in while I was shooting them, and they weren't sailing full sails up, just sitting there while I'm pounding them. So that's not cool. They went through the grid before me.
Seems like an acceptable risk if you're willing to grid your boat during a battle.
Yeah, and that's not, I mean, it's not a good thing. It's a terrible thing.
But I've never been able to count the seconds in near minutes between the differences in some people gridding.
Remember, people used to do that all the time. They'd go to the grid line and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, try to get away.
This season, I saw Dreki and Dab go through a grid. It took them, I want to say, at least 20 minutes till they loaded in.
Yeah, it was
And
bad.
that was just going grid to grid. I mean, a lot can happen in that time. And for you to put a lot of time into your boat, for it to take 20 minutes to grid you in, someone comes in behind you, went right through, sitting there waiting for you. It's kind of a game changer. It kind of ruins everything on boats.
Zeke has something to bring up as well. He just messaged me. The fact that the wiki never gets updated. There's never any type of pertinent information ever put out there for new players or rejoining players to read on to update themselves. So you've got to kind of either hop in on the PTR if you get the chance, or basically kind of by default, if you get into a fight with somebody and they beat you, you basically got to learn their tactic by losing.
So the game's in a bad state right now. And because of that, people that want to put that kind of effort into maintaining content for websites and stuff, why would you do that for a game that has 300 players?
I think a big part of that, too, is the competition between companies.
On top of that, knowledge is power.
The company I played with this season had a private server up a whole week before the new season, and all they did on there every single day was test new metas. They did mock fleet fights. They did land PvP every day. They were trying to find anything they could that would give them an advantage. And I think, I know at least for me, I started the game in season 1 as a bob, like a total beach bob. And it wasn't until season 2 when I joined a big company and I linked up with Soggy Gorilla that I really started learning the game and figuring out that you can't sail a boat around with 80% weight to start with.
And then 2, I think everything's moved really to Discord. Discord's kind of overpowered that as being a central connectivity hub for content and questions. You can get on there and ask questions and they'll answer in the chat. Kind of invalidates a website that has to be constantly changed when they're updating things every week. It's hard to keep up with static content. Imagine that you had everything written up for a grid zone, and then now they've completely upended that, so everything you had on the website is completely irrelevant. It's that kind of stuff that puts people off from even putting the effort into doing it.
So curating the content at all, right?
There's no consistency in anything. So by doing that, the content creators for websites and stuff like that's completely dried up. I mean, they've even turned off the websites that would do like the data collection. I forget Admiral knows what site that is, but it's like you could track people and all this other stuff. They had that set up for a little while, but because they're not consistent in their API and it never works, they just dropped the support for it.
What do you guys feel about the new map overall compared to just the original one that was just a grid?
I kind of like this one, personally.
how it's bigger. I'm happy that we went back to a bigger map since NA and EU are together. However, I feel like a lot of the desync issues is because of the portals. If you go to like official Atlas Discord, a lot of the questions are, "Oh, how do I get from here to here?" Because it's not. You really got to look at the map and then memorize it. That's a lot for somebody that's new.
While it's not very intuitive, I do think it's pretty immersive. I think it's like the best of both worlds of the old stuff versus the ones we had last season. I like being able to both portal and go through the wall.
I think it's dumb. The way that they're duplicating the real Atlas and calling places like North Pole, Africa in a fantasy game is a complete turnoff for me.
I will
I
say
like
this.
the Maw.
I do
That was
like.
cool.
I like.
They
the
should have
Maw.
called it the Bermuda Triangle if they were keeping a theme.
I like how the Maw is like a hardcore zone where if you die, you can't respawn. I do like that aspect a lot. I think the other bullshit that's happening in the game hurts it a lot, like the boats teleporting and NPCs vanishing and stuff like that. It really makes it unfair if something like that happens to you when you're in a hardcore zone like the Maw.
Yeah, you can't make hardcore content like that when the game doesn't work.
But
You're punishing people for a broken game with making it even more hard.
one thing
It's
I
already
really
a
do
challenge
like,
to kill yourself, basically, when you have to because of some bug, and now you can't do that in the mall.
one thing I really do like that they added is the portals, because the days of sailing across the map 8 grids for a resource run or for power stones is gone. Thank goodness. Like the portals have completely changed that. I think that's an amazing fix to where, an 8 grid trip, which is going to take you several hours, is now like 20 minutes. It's
Trade wins.
big game changer. Even
I don't like the trade wins.
more so than the
personally.
trade wins.
I didn't even know they did that.
But if the trade winds worked at all, they would be great, but they just push the mod boats right out the side.
Yeah, the trade winds, they don't work very good, I don't think, in my own opinion. You got some boats that can turn on a dime in them. You got some boats that can't turn at all in them.
It's a unifying theme in Atlas is that there are great ideas. It's just the implementation of them is wonky and at best dysfunctional.
Right.
Why does the trade wind propel a different boat just because it has more sails at ridiculous 40-kilometer speeds?
Why don't they have them actually going to places that are, relevant? They have them going into random directions to random locations. Why don't they send some to the Maw, send some to the Freeports, Golden Ages? I haven't used one this entire season because
they redid the map and they didn't redo the trade winds. They just left them as is, so you get all this wonkiness of how they were set up before.
How do you guys
The amount
feel
of
about,
effort to change that is huge.
How do you guys feel about the new Power Stone setup? How there's new bosses?
I love the new bosses.
I thought it was cool.
Although,
the best thing they've done in a long time.
Same.
I think they maybe made some of them a little too easy. Like the fact that you can go solo with a mace naked, several of those new bosses.
I agree, and the inconsistent mythos reward for it is frustrating.
Definitely.
I think personally they were a great change, but
Lore-wise.
unfortunately, I feel like that great change was completely overshadowed when literally everybody figured out how to refresh the timer on keys. Then it just turns into, we're going to farm this boss 10 times, get 100 keys from it, and then do all the power stones with those keys. I was having a pretty good time doing power stones until someone in the company found how to refresh keys, and it's a lot easier than it used to be. I'm not going to repeat on here how to do it, but it's really easy. And then it was just boring. Now it's tedious. We're just sailing grid to grid, getting these things done.
Absolutely. If they forced them to just disappear when you're in grid, and you had to do them in grid, that would make it an interesting challenge.
And that would
just tag them as NPCs.
That would be a very easy thing to do too. Just make them vanish as soon as you grid.
Yeah, in such an opinionless game that Atlas can be, having some storyline opinion might give you just something to do at times.
One thing I do appreciate that is a pretty minor thing that they added is the level cap when you first start playing the game is like level 70 something. And I think that was a big change that is really good because you don't have to do any of the PvE stuff if you don't want to. You can still get to a respectable level and get the most out of the game. You don't have to do all the power stones if you truly don't want to. Whereas before, I think the cap was level 50 something where you're just not quite high enough level 51. To do anything.
Yep, this is the first season I have not gotten all of my power stones. And I think my level cap's like 89 or something. So it's not terrible.
The way the game is structured, it just doesn't make sense to have to do that.
No, it's a lot.
I've done most of the PvE stuff this season needed for levels just because I'm greedy and I want the levels in PvP. But I haven't maxed it out because, just like you said, it feels fine. I'll just get it eventually.
What kind of stuff do you guys foresee being what makes you quit playing the season before it ends? I'll go first. I'm pretty much retired for this season at this point. I'm only logging in if someone needs help defending or if there's something set up for me. But what really killed the season for me was really early on. I'm a land raider. That's all I do. I do land PvP. I don't mess with boats anymore. I love killing tame pens and sinking boats in their harbor and breaking puckles. I spent the whole day preparing a land raid, loaded up a boat, sailed 5 or so grids, finally made landfall, and the server desynced me to where on my screen I was totally safe, hundreds of meters away from the threat. And then it instantly portaled me back to where the bad guys were, and I instantly died. And after taking several hours to get this set up and sail out there and start PvPing, to just instantly die to something that I had no control over killed any motivation I had to do any further land PvP at all. And even before that, when I was sailing the boat to the island, somebody was shooting at my boat and their boat was entirely invisible. All I could see was their cannonballs flying through the air. So it was not a good day for me. It pretty much killed the season for me, that whole thing.
I mean, when you sit down to play a game and you invest time into the game to play and you can't, that's a pretty big turnoff. I don't think anybody would really want to play a game like that.
Have you guys had anything similar happen this season where something just totally out of your control just railroaded whatever it was you were trying to do?
The desync affects
it happens
you while you're
constantly.
on the wheel. You can't shoot at times when you're on the wheel and you're desynced and you have to get off the wheel and log off. I've had that happen several times to me anyway in fights, and that's kind of a bad thing because I pulled up next to another galley. They had a stronger galley than me, and it was kind of get their sails or they're going to get mine. And I couldn't open my gun ports or shoot, and I had to log out before it would do anything. So
at least once a day, I have to punch and kill my character off because I'm desynced and I can't access anything that I'm trying to do. At least once a day, if not more.
Yeah, that's definitely happened a lot where you can't drown. Nothing can. Only thing you could do is punch yourself to death.
Yep.
I'd like to welcome Alka to the podcast. Alka, you want to give a brief overview of your history with Atlas, how many hours you have, what you like doing. You don't need to name companies that you've been in, but you can if you'd like.
It's yours truly, Alka. Thank you for having me. Sorry for being a little late. I've been playing the game literally since the day of release on Steam for the first time. I have about 2,500 hours in the game, and I enjoy terrorizing entire companies. That's what I've been doing since day one, and I will continue to do that. So thank you for having me.
And Sagi, we kind of skipped over you. You want to give a brief introduction?
I'm co-leader with Admiral Roland for the Scrandy Squad. I have about 20,000 hours in the game, and I feel like I'm a relative guru when it comes to what is wrong with this game and why you shouldn't play it. And I appreciate you having me here.
All right, let's move on to grinding time versus fun time. How many hours do you guys think that you spend doing grinding materials, building your base, versus actually having fun?
So they know it's a problem. You can tell from season 3 onward, the changes they made in the game were to try to eliminate the time spent building, investing, and creating to playing. But still, a majority of your time in this game will be spent crafting, harvesting, and building, with very little of it spent the other way around. The only way to avoid that is to be in a group where your skills put you above the rest, where other people will contribute to your gameplay so that you can game more than you farm, essentially.
So the farmhouses were nice because it did add that part where you didn't necessarily have to go out and gather those things. But then you're limited because the warehouse won't reach every part of your island. So then you still have to go manually empty that or those farmhouses. And they've changed the way that the farmhouses work from when they first started to now. Still not sure how I feel about that part because you still can't harvest a lot of things with the farmhouse. They'll never eliminate the need for farming because they don't get hide, they don't get oil, they don't get coal.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense of how it is now because it's like half lukewarm. That doesn't farm everything you need. It can't be collected. It really doesn't make a difference. It's just a different way or form of farming.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really improve anything. It just makes it somewhat less painful.
And I'm going to chime in here because you're right, Sagi, and agreeing with you. I think the intention was to remove some of the quote-unquote chores that you have to do in order to get enjoyable gameplay and value
more
out of the game. But they're like, yeah, so you remember this chore you have to do it. You no longer have to do it. Now you have to do this other one.
Yeah, now you have to now instead of farming. Yeah.
And the only way the farmhouses are effective is, so we've added them also to the pool of BP so you can craft like mythical ones, right?
But
so
they don't
good, but they don't work. Or you have to go in.
And then on top of that, we had to figure out ways of bugging them out so we could get more of them because they don't harvest fast enough to really do anything. You could harvest 100 times faster by hand.
Plus all the maintenance for the upkeep, and we're gonna need an alt company to put it under put the farmhouses under a different company that pays tax on the island, and then we place blue structures and beds, and it's just.
There's so much that doesn't work, and you to get around it, you ended up doing all this crazy stuff. When honestly, they should have just put it in and made it work. That was the biggest thing.
Correct. I think it was easier if they had not done that, and they've just told if you need wood, go get on the elephants and farm a million wood, and would have been less painful than having to deal with the rotation of coal and.
Bottom line is, they could have done an improvement on farmhouses by literally upping the gathering rate. That's all they had to do.
Well, so the other side of that, though, like at least I think the worry of too much resources. I mean, to be fair, I'm on board of too much resources. I think it's worth the risk, but it's combat through building. Just like in the PvE servers, you see someone just spam the living snot out of something. And so that kind of over resources leads to that crazy type of spam, in my opinion.
It has to be that way, though. Unfortunately, the way the game is designed, if you don't spam your island, you can't keep someone off of it.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be that way regardless. People do that already anyway.
Because you can't control your combat timer enough. The combat timer is way too huge. You can't control who attacks you. You literally, the only option you have to defend yourself is to spam your island. If you don't, you're going to lose your island.
Through someone else's offensive spam.
Correct. To build or be built.
Yeah, absolutely it is. That's also speaking as someone who has like 10,000 traps on his island that he personally made.
You mean that lag fest of a crap shithole you have?
They do not lag, I promise you. It's always been the galleys and rendering galleys within Maine.
It's just me that lags, not you. It's a me problem.
We only got 2 galleys over at our thing, and it is laggy. Okay.
Is it? Is it
Laggy.
We have
very
2
large
galleys
traps?
and a karma. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say this.
He hasn't. He's been limited on resources because the warehouses don't do what they need to be
That's
doing.
by design.
And I have been out farming on an elephant for 5 out of 7 days of the week, so it's not fun for me.
I also think that it's probably 3-to-1 on hours spent generating resources versus using said resources. It can be very frustrating.
You must be very efficient, my good friend. If you wanted to build your own galleon, what would it take you to farm up a galleon? No tames. Let's keep tames out of this.
Do I have harvest boost, and can I use gridding in and out to reset the timer on my harvest boost?
No, that would be a bug. It's not supposed to work that way, sir.
Probably like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours.
How fast can it sync?
Minutes? Seconds?
Is that really work? I mean, that's the kind of play style loop that the game has right now. You literally can spend upwards of 200 hours building, creating, improving, and editing your boat for it to sink in less than a minute.
And because you didn't render in.
Because you didn't render in, because you didn't know how to turn right, because you got overwhelmed, you got caught in a bad situation. Many more things can happen than building it.
Gridding?
Your boat can just sink in the harbor because some idiot unanchored it.
Or
because they built a boat.
Yeah, dropped another boat, and now we're at 41, and everyone's taking damage.
So, like, the time investment that they want you to put into these boats doesn't realistically match the complexity and the amount of time it requires to keep it alive.
That's not even counting the BPs, all the time wasted doing maps and farming them all just to make your boat that goes away in a minute better.
Well, also, like, let's be real, probably more maps have been done in the last 2 seasons than all the seasons before, simply because we have the free port that generates maps for itself. If they just make some of the things easier for us, we would do them.
It saddens me that they can literally look at the game and say, wow, people are going to that extent to make these things possible. They're breaking the game to get that done. Why not just put it in the game?
That would be too easy, Soggy.
That's the difference between a survival game and a well-made game that people care about? I don't know what to tell you.
It's also the difference between what they wanted to, like a hardcore game, versus the cheesing aspect of it, which is how it's done in practicality.
Okay, so I'll go with you on that line of thought, that they don't want to do it because it makes it too easy. Then why do these bugs stay in the game? They're known, people know about them, they've been reported, and they don't fix them. There's been stuff that's been broken like that in the game since season 1 that is like, you just play that way. That's standard operating procedure.
It's because I needed a cog. I needed more modular ships. You don't understand.
We're not even going to get into the modular ships. I told you, they look like my Fisher-Price first boat.
I will say this about the modular ships. I like the idea of a lot of them. I think especially the Broadsider fits the role that I always said Atlas needed, a boat in between Brigantine and Galleon. But I wish they were just like the Legacy ships, that they had planks, that they played the same way, that they fit within the same speed, and they could still turn. If they handled and moved at the same speed as the Legacy ships, I think they'd be amazing. They would fill different roles, and, you know, because right now, how I see things, all the mega companies are running strictly galleons. The medium-sized companies are running broadsiders, and the smaller companies are just running whatever. Ramming galleons, schooners, It's just really weird. Like there's no you don't when you see a fleet of boats, it's either all galleons or all modular ships, and they never fight each other. It seems like to me, because you're not going to take a bunch of modular ships against a king galleon fleet. Galleons are still king despite them being slow and all
And you're
that.
not going to throw a boat that you spent 10 to 20 hours building away just for the fun of it, because unfortunately it takes way too much effort to get a boat like that and to have fun with it.
Mr. Pusswood.
Because he doesn't build his own boats. He has people that care for him, like caretakers, give him boats. Like myself.
All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour now, so let's start wrapping this up. I guess for the final topic, let's talk about where you guys, if you guys were in control of Atlas and you could decide the changes and make the game how you want it to be, what changes would you make right now?
Season 3 map with trade winds, no portals, no modular boats.
I would say balance the boats. They need to stop adding stuff, and they need to balance what they have with adding the cannons, the large cannons, the way they are. They changed the sails to where they don't mean nothing essentially now, because boats can go max speed, and it doesn't even matter what kind of sail. You could put a weight sail on there.
So first thing they need to do is they need to schedule seasons. No more of this, well, we're in a new season now. It may go a month, it may go a week, it may go a day. They need to have scheduled seasons. Every game that has resets does that. So that people know how long they're going to play. And then what they need to do is they need to work on content during that period and don't add anything to the game. They need to do bug fixes, balancing during that period of season. And then the next season, they add everything.
I also agree with that. Each time that I see the communities falling apart or is shrinking is after a prolonged bug due to, like, let's be real, a half-assed content release.
Yeah, they add content that breaks the current cycle, that changes things too drastically, and people end up losing everything they've built. And they need to work on stability. They need to fix the game to where it's not in a bad state. It has to be playable. I don't care if it's an alpha. If they're going to have it available for play, it needs to be playable.
I can agree with that. The two most enjoyable things in this game, large-scale land content and large-scale water content, are absolutely embarrassing to try to recommend friends to.
Then when you look at the successful, like, dedicated servers that people have bought and paid for, they're all running the game as it was 2 years ago without any changes to it. So when you have a dedicated, managed, basically, I forget what they call that type of server, but it's run by the game, the actual server that has less players than a Dedi server that people have just created out of their own whims, that's a problem. You should emulate what works and what doesn't work. Official servers. When the official servers, less people play that than dedicated servers that people pay for. That's just ridiculous.
What about you, Jarecki? What do you think? If you could change Atlas right now, what would you fix first?
First, it'd have to be boat stuff, really. I mean, for one, the fact that it renders in 2 objects for every painted part, that's ridiculous. The different metas, the fact that you can use one boat and it's better than every boat in the game, is pretty crazy. I mean, there's like better as in survivability and damage wise, right? Like the galleon survivability is key. It's that there's nothing that tops that as far as how much damage it can take. And then you got that ramming galley right now that's just so fast. Like you could bar shot a galleon and then shoot until you were out of cannonballs and either sink it or basically at a stalemate with a boat with no sails on it. But I'd like to see him fix some of the boat stuff. I kind of personally, I don't know if I necessarily personally like the fact that you can hide under a armored dock to save your whole island. You can just put it wherever and put your flag next to it, and that's it. It's season GG. Nobody's taking your island. I mean, especially certain islands, you can put it semi-inland. You can't even hit it with a boat. So at that point, your attacker is looking at a cliff plat with 100 cannons on it, when hopefully enough people to man them all to try to shoot the thing down before you notice.
I mean, you can have an insider pull the gold out of the dock.
That too.
That's the most likely way I see to lose an island.
That's a problem too. It really is, and that's why I think the ships in the bottle concept would way better than the armored dock.
I think something that would be ideal and key is to get rid of the fact that if you rank 10 a structure on a boat, it makes you unanchor the boat if you're not that rank. I think that's the dumbest thing.
Is so long as you're also okay with not storing red anchored boats. That should annoy the heck out of me.
Storing red anchored?
Yeah. Store red anchored boats either just in peacetime on there, as long as it's anchored and you overweight it, it won't take any damage until you pull the anchor.
Oh, right.
So I just don't love people living out of houseboats.
An interesting concept for sure. But I think I agree with everybody else here. There should be some fix to some of the current mechanics. My opinion, I'm not much of a boat guy. However, looking back at Season 1 and Season 2, where some of the ship battles were glorious, and bar shot was nowhere to be found, right? I think bar shot should be severely nerfed, more in line with how it was historically used. I mean, we're on a game where the boats have sails and bar shots existed for a reason, but there are some things. Number one is that they were completely super inaccurate. So you would shoot them at point blank range, almost like a shotgun, which was, it's not what we do right now. You load it on a medium cannon and it has the same range and velocity as a regular cannonball. That should not be the case. And whenever you shoot it, it doesn't follow a linear trajectory. I mean, you have two big objects connected by a chain of some sort. Of the way physics works, it's going to pull the projectile in all sorts of different ways. It's never going to land where you aim it. So some spread or variation, right, where you shoot it and it doesn't really go where you aim, has way shorter range and perhaps some damage to the fibers and severely less damage to the mass, I think will make for more interesting boat fights, where you could use bar shot depending on your positioning and have some place, but it shouldn't be the meta entirely. So once your cells are gone, that's it. The fight it's over. I don't think it's as enjoyable as or what you would hope to look in a ship battle. I mean, when you guys look at certain movies like maybe Pirates of the Caribbean, like did they shoot bar shot and the cells are over? Oh, they surrender. No, there were some epic battles. You saw cannonballs ripping through the plant, people having to bucket, all sorts of crazy stuff happening on the boat. We should move towards that. The other thing I would say is that I know in certain designs, when you have something that works too good on the game, the line of thought is, oh, the community thinks this is balanced, this is working perfectly, so let's nerf it because it's too good. No. You should look at why is everything else not viable. Why? And try to go with that line of thought. I mean, galleons are good, broadsiders are good. Why do schooners not have a place in these type of battles? What can be done with schooners to make them more usable in these large kind of concepts? And I think if with going with that mentality, you might retain some of your player base and you might maybe land with some interesting new design concepts that the people are maybe looking forward to, instead of nerfing and changing what already works. Right.
You do have to keep in mind, unfortunately, Atlas has two big groups that play it. they have PvE, and they have PvP. And then on top of that, there are two separate groups of that. There are large-scale PvE and large-scale PvP, and small scales of both. So making a change that brings a schooner in line for large-scale PvP, they completely break it in PvE.
So something with the boats right now I've noticed, and fighting with some of these boats where they're increasing their speed and making them crazy, broadsider, ramming galley, and turtle ships.
They're not supposed to work that way, though, are they?
Well, no, I don't know. They actually did intend to increase the speed of the turtle ship, which is actually ridiculous. You can put, what is it, like base 9K weight, you can put 8,000 pounds in there. It's at 90%, a little above 90% weight, and the thing still is doing 23 knots. And you can do that. 23 knots is 2 weight sails, 1 speed, 2 speed, as long as you have 1 weight sail. If you have 1 weight sail, that thing will go 23 to 24 knots, basically almost full of weight.
That's extremely fast.
But the one thing I'm not getting that they didn't bring into the factor is the cannonballs and bar shot don't move at that speed. So now I'm a whole boat length in front of somebody, shoot as far forward as I can, see my little lines that come out of the cannons that say are free to fire, and you still miss.
Yourself.
No, and you still miss. You shoot out like broad, out the side, and you still miss. So
the speed of the cannons is hard coded in the game, so they can't increase the speed of that without breaking other things.
Right. So now you've got to bar shot somebody on one of those 3 boats in particular. You have to be like, either you got to get them slowed down where they're trying to fight you, or you got to be in front of them. You got to be like running, been running ahead of time, and like just they're trying to catch up to you, and you've got a shot.
It's the same thing for the grapple boat. If you're not in front of them, you can't grapple them because the grappling thing doesn't go as fast as the boat does.
Yep.
I'd be, as one of the happy mod boat captains, I'd be willing to trade some speed for some maneuverability. But the maneuverability on these things is so poor that it's got to go fast, or you're just going to get outturned, which is all a galley wants to do is just turn in a circle.
It should not be able to turn in a circle like that. That's not intended.
They force it to, they make them, they didn't balance any of the boats. They took, the schooners is the fast boat, and now it's one of the slowest boats you got.
Remember, pretty much the code for the old boats is solidified. They're not ever going to change anything about those boats.
Well, so
you
let's
get
take
rid
the
of
new
one
boats.
or the other.
Let's take the new boats, right? So like the ramming galley, you can hit anything, right? It's super fast. But you can, so its point is to be the ramming galley. Why are you still able to put 200 to 300% cannons on there, and now you've got a ramming galley that's the fastest boat in the game that can also bar shot. So
and front-facing cannons, yeah.
And front-facing cannons, right? So and then you've got the turtle boat.
Torpedoes.
You got the turtle boat that's supposed to be this crazy harbor runner. However, it goes 23 to 24 knots, almost full weight. You can put 2 weight sails on there and just carry 200,000 cannonballs if you really wanted to farm that out. And then it's got so the negative is I haven't yet seen or even heard of or seen in any of the Discord forum pages a BP for a single gunport module, i.e. gives the armor with it, right? So you can do the regular gunport modules blueprinted however you lose your armor. Now you've just got regular planks on there. So
at the end of the day, the problem with the game is that they have too many cooks in the kitchen. No one is going in any one direction. You've crossed the streams. Modular boats don't fit into the game the same way that build your own boat the way you want did. So when they combine the two, you get weird, crazy things that are going on because it just doesn't fit the overall feel of the game. Not enough of the game has changed to incorporate truly modular boats because legacy boats still exist. Does that make sense? There's too many things. What happens when you add 50 ingredients to fucking chili? It might taste good, but it's probably going to go and taste like shit.
I think that you just hit it on the head. The they're not meant to mix together. Their mechanics are completely different.
Behave entirely separately from what is existing in the game. And then they've been this entire time trying to incorporate them so heavily, when realistically, they need to build another game if they want those fucking modular boats.
I think if they were to have a chance to really bring the whole entire community back, is to get some insight on land PvP. The ship in the bottle, I think, if they got rid of armored docks and did ship in a bottle, for one, it would bring out creativity again. People would make the good, big, extravagant harbor entrances that do. If they brought it back to just normal damage, I think it would be fine. Like right now, the land structures obviously do less damage to boats, so that kind of might not work as well as it used to.
Jarecki, remember, when the ship in the bottle concept came out, this was season 1, when there was no ability to anchor your boat.
Right.
So the anchors were introduced as a, quote, ship in a bottle because it was supposed to safeguard your ship while you weren't online.
Well,
then that's just not enough because it can still sink.
To save
400% defense is not enough.
I think to save the population that's left for the game that wants to play it one day would
Why
be
do we need a dock to make a boat immune when it's anchored? Like, that system still works. Why did they add a whole nother system in on top of what already was there that they could have just tweaked? If you anchor your ship and it sits there long enough, it should be invulnerable until it's unanchored.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. Like, even during combat timer, though?
Possibly, yeah, if that's the way they want to make it work. It is right now as far as if you have an armored dock, isn't it?
I mean, if you have an armored dock, yeah, it's safe during combat timer, essentially.
Pretty much. I mean, unless you put 35 million damage on it. I mean, why wouldn't an anchor work the same way? If they put the damage reduction up to like 1600% or something crazy. Yeah, you could do damage shit if you want, one at a time.
Right.
I'm on board for something like that. Getting them just off of their server would be my preference.
Really what it needs to happen is when you dock your boat, it disappears.
Yeah, the land combat is really inhibited by harbors and mains.
So they already have tame pins. Why don't they have boat pins?
I think their main focus should be to turn the game into a 4-week reset PTR with the intentions of bringing out a new game. And if they're really... I see hope in the modular ships. I like a couple of them. I don't like a couple of the features for them, but I think other than the turning aspect, they're pretty all right to play around with and have fun with. I really like the repairing of the turtle ship. But yeah, if they turned it into a 4-week wipe PTR and with expectation to bring out just a new game, and just if they took the time to code out the old stuff, code in the new stuff, and start fresh with just modular ships and not the old ships, I think they'd have a lot better working game. Because right now, I think I agree.
It's a fucking Mod Podge of shit.
They're trying to work on modular ships, and when they've got one OP, then they try to maybe do a little bit of something with the old ships, or they break one ship, and then now it makes everything they've done, not as good. So now brings up that,
they're
what do
trying
I
to make
nerf
these
and what do I
changes
make
in
better?
the middle of a freaking game when people have already invested time. Let's say you went and built 5 galleons and they nerfed the shit out of them. And what are you going to do with 5 galleons that can't compete anymore? You know what I mean?
Well, how about this, right? Mythical Broadsider was 4 sails, and then they make it to where it only has 3 sails.
Yeah, it's fucked. And now everybody that has 4 sails has a fucking amazing boat.
Exactly.
They have done that multiple times. They've noticed a bug, fixed the bug, and they're like, well, we can't get rid of the ships that have it already. Too bad.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up at this point. I'd like to thank everyone here for showing up. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do some more of these in the future, even if the topic isn't necessarily about Atlas. And although a lot of our talk about Atlas has been pretty negative, about things we don't like, we keep coming back to the game because there's nothing else like it. And we're all chasing the nostalgia that we had when we first started playing this game, because there's something special here, and we're just trying to get back to those days and have those good times, and we want nothing more than to see Atlas become perfect. Does anybody else have anything to say before I shut shut it off?
Yeah,
Atlas,
I would. Yeah, I'm about to throw up. So quit that.
yeah, Atlas is like that person you start dating, and then it turns out they're toxic, and they tell you there's nobody like me in the world, and they're actually right. They're coming back to the game.
Because there isn't anything
Jeez.
quite like it.
That person is correct. Nothing quite like it.
Well, I love the fact it's a progression-based game, right? Everybody can go out and find another progression-based game, but this is, for some reason, Atlas is the one that you can't progress and be done, right? I can't say, okay, I'm done with this task and I'm done with the night because, well, you're not, right? You finish one thing and you're on to the next. That's what always appeals to me for it. On top of the ship combat and everything, which part of preparing for ship combat is, there's a lot of other steps involved, from BPs to farming BPs to farming resources.
The best thing that Atlas devs have done is remove the cost of boats with the gold. That, I think, brought a lot of people back to the game, knowing that, if you're going to spend all this time farming the boat, why do you got to spend all this money and more time getting gold to drop 50,000 gold on a galleon?
That being said,
100,000.
like basic economics to me. If you want more people to do a thing, remove the costs associated with doing the thing. Make the barrier to entry shorter, and we will go do it, because boat PvP in this game is super fun. Land PvP in this game is super fun when it works. The most fun I've had this season is taking people's decks. Land PvPing on someone's boat and listening to a captain panic about it is just the finest thing that's ever happened to this game.
Last thing I need to say is the devs need to give me my hand-to-hand abilities back. That's all I want.
There was something special about punching some guy out and then dragging him off, like a fucking zombie.
There's no, martial fitness anymore.
Say what you want about land PvP, but there's not a greater moment than seeing Rambo jump off the boat, knock out a guy, take his armor, and then get back on the boat to continue the raid. Like nothing happened. Just the most nonchalant way possible. Yeah, I got a kid now.
Yeah, and when am I going to have my breedable humans, huh? That was promised to me.
Right?
I'll go back to breeding if it happens.
All right. Well, with that, let's wrap it up. Thanks, everybody.